Hello, everyone. Welcome to day 22 of our book, which is called The Magic of Thinking Big. And we are on the last chapter of the book. Can you imagine? It's been just 22 days and we are about to finish a book. So, tomorrow will be the last day for this book reading. But yes, we will do half of the chapter today and the other half will be tomorrow. And the topic for the chapter is also very interesting, which is called as How to Think Like a Leader. Okay, so eventually we all are leaders, right? And we need to start learning how to think like a leader and act upon it so that we grow in our life. Okay, so let me share my screen. Let me know if this is visible. Yes, all right. So, Chapter 13, How to Think Like a Leader. Remind yourself once again that you are not pulled to high levels of success. Rather, you are lifted there by those working beside and below you. Achieving high level success requires the support and the cooperation of others. And gaining this support and cooperation of others requires leadership ability, success, and the ability to lead others. That is, getting them to do things they wouldn't do if they were not led, go hand in hand. The success producing principles explained in the previous chapters are valuable equipment in helping you develop your leadership capacity. At this point, we want to master four special leadership rules or principles that can cause others to do things for us in the executive suite, in business, in social clubs, in the home, anywhere we find people. These four leadership rules or principles are: first, trade minds with the people you want to influence. I'll repeat, trade minds with the people you want to influence. Second, think, what is the human way to handle this? Third, think progress. Believe in progress. Push for progress. Fourth, take time out to confer with yourself and develop your supreme thinking power. Practicing these rules produces results. Putting them to use in everyday situations takes the mystery out of the gold plated word leadership. Let's see how. Leadership rule number one: trade minds with the people you want to influence. Trading minds with the people you want to influence is a magic way to get others, friends, associates, customers, employees, to act the way you want them to act. Study these two case histories and see why. Ted B worked as a television copywriter and director for a large advertising agency. When the agency obtained a new account, a children's shoe manufacturer, Ted was assigned responsibility for developing several TV commercials. A month or so after the campaign had been launched, it became clear that the advertising was doing little or nothing to increase product movement in retail outlets. Attention was focused on the TV commercials because in most cities, only television advertising was used. Through research of television viewers, they found that about 4% of the people thought it was simply a great commercial, one of the best, these 4% said. The remaining 96% were either indifferent to the commercials or, in plain language, thought they smelled. Hundreds of comments like these were volunteered. It's wacky. The rhythm sounds like a New Orleans band at 3 a.m. My kids like to watch most TV commercials, but when the shoe thing comes on, they go to the bathroom or refrigerator. I think It's too uppity up. Some seems to me someone's trying to be too clever. Something especially interesting turned up when all the interviews were put together and analyzed. The 4% who liked the commercial were people pretty much like Ted in terms of income, education, sophistication, and interest. The remaining 96% were definitely in a different socio-economic class. Ted's commercials, which cost a lot of money, flopped because Ted thought only of his own interest. He had prepared the commercials thinking of the way he buys shoes, not the way the great majority buys shoes. He developed commercials that pleased him personally, not commercials that pleased the great bulk of people. The result would have been much different had Ted projected himself into the minds of the masses of ordinary people and asked himself two questions. If I were a parent, what kind of a commercial would make me want to buy those shoes? If I were a child, what kind of a commercial would make me go tell my mom or dad that I want these shoes? Why John failed in retailing? John is an intelligent, well educated, attractive girl of 24. Fresh from college, John got a job as an assistant buyer in ready to wear goods to a low to medium price department store. She came highly recommended. John has ambition, talent, and enthusiasm, one letter said. She is certain to succeed in a big way. But John did not succeed in a big way. John lasted only 8 months and then quit retailing for other work. I knew her buyer well, and one day I asked him, what happened? John is a fine girl, and she has many fine qualities, he said. But she had one major limitation. What was that? I asked. Well, John was forever buying merchandise that she liked, but most of our customers didn't. She selected styles, colors, materials, and prices she liked without putting herself in the shoes of the people who shop here. When I would suggest to her that maybe a certain line wasn't right for us, she would say, oh, they will love this. I do. I think this will move fast. John had been brought up in a well to do home. She had been educated to want quality. Price was not important to her. John just couldn't see clothing through the eyes of low to middle income people. So the merchandise she bought just wasn't suitable. The point is this: to get others to do what you want them to do, you must see things through their eyes. When you trade minds, the secret of how to influence other people effectively shows up. A very successful salesman friend told me he spends a lot of time anticipating how prospects will react to his presentation before he gives it. Trading minds with the audience helps the speaker design a more interesting, harder hitting talk. Trading minds with employees help the supervisor provide more effective, better received instructions. A young credit executive explained to me how this technique worked for him. When I was brought into this store, a medium sized clothing store, as assistant credit manager, I was assigned the job of handling all collection correspondence. The collection letters the store had been using greatly disappointed me. They were strong, insulting, and threatening. I read them and thought, brother, I would be mad as hell if somebody sent me letters like this. I never would pay. So I just got to work and started writing the kind of letter that would move me to pay an overdue bill if I received it. It worked. By putting myself in the shoes of the overdue customer, so to speak, collections climbed to a record high. Numerous political candidates lose elections because they fail to look at themselves through the minds of the typical voters. One political candidate for a national office, apparently fully as qualified as his opponent, lost by a tremendous margin for one single reason. He used a vocabulary that only a small percentage of the voters could understand. His opponent, on the other hand, thought in terms of the voters' interest. When he talked to farmers, he used their language. When he spoke to factory workers, he used words they were easily familiar with. When he spoke on TV, he addressed himself to Mr. Typical Voter, not to Dr. College Professor. Keep this question in mind. What would I think of this if I exchanged places with the other person? It paves the way to more successful action. Thinking of the interest of the people we want to influence is an excellent thought rule in every situation. A few years ago, a small electronics manufacturer developed a fuse that would never blow out. The manufacturer priced the product to sell for $1.25 and then retained an advertising agency to promote it. The account executive placed in the charge of the advertising immediately became intensely enthusiastic. His plan was to blanket the country with mass advertising on TV, radio, and newspapers. This is it, he said. We will sell 10 million the first year. His advertiser tried to caution him, explaining that fuses are not a popular item. They have no romantic appeal, and people want to get by as cheaply as possible when they buy fuses. Why not? The advertiser said. Use selected magazines and sell it to the high income levels. They were overruled, and the mass campaign was underway, only to be called off in 6 weeks because of disappointing results. The trouble was this: the advertising executive looked at the high priced fuses with his eyes, the eyes of a high income person. He failed to see the product through the eyes of the mass market income levels. Had he put himself in their position, he would have seen the wisdom of directing the promotion toward the upper income group, and the account would have been saved. Develop your power to trade minds with the people you want to influence. The exercise below will help. Practice trading minds exercise. We will read the situation, and for best result, what should you ask yourself? First, giving someone work instructions. For best results, you should ask yourself, looking at this from the viewpoint of someone who is new to this, have I made myself clear? Second, writing an advertisement. Ask yourself, if I were a typical prospective buyer, how would I react to this ad? Telephone manners. Ask yourself, if I were the other person, what would I think of my telephone voice and manners? Gift. Ask yourself, is this gift something I would like, or is it something he will like? Often there is an enormous difference. Fifth, the way I give orders. Ask yourself, would I like to carry out orders if they were given to me the way I give them to others? Child discipline. Ask yourself, if I were the child, considering his age, experience, and emotions, how would I react to this discipline? My appearance. Ask yourself, what would I think of my superior if he were dressed like me? Preparing a speech. Ask yourself, considering the background and interest of the audience, what would I think of this remark? Entertainment. Ask yourself, If I were my guest, what kinds of food, music, and entertainment would I like best? Put the trading minds principle to work for you. First, consider the other person's situation. Put yourself in his shoes, so to speak. Remember, his interest, income, intelligence, and background may differ considerably from yours. Second, now ask yourself, if I were in his situation, how would I react to this? Whatever it is you want him to do. Third, then take the action that would move you if you were the other person. All right. So we will follow this rule number one. Leadership rule number two. Think, what is the human way to handle this? People use different approaches to leadership situations. One approach is to assume the position of a dictator. The dictator makes all decisions without consulting those affected. He refuses to hear his subordinate's side of a question because, down deep, perhaps he is afraid the subordinate might be right and this would cause him to lose face. Dictators don't last long. Employees may fake loyalty for a while, but unrest soon develops. Some of the best employees leave, and those remaining get together and plot against the tyrant. The result is that the organization ceases to function smoothly. This puts the dictator in a bad light with his superior. The second leadership technique is the cold, mechanical, I am a rule book operator approach. The fellow using this approach handles everything exactly according to the book. He doesn't recognize that every rule or policy or plan is only a guide for the usual cases. This would be leader treats human beings as machines. And of all things people don't like, perhaps the most disliked is being treated like a machine. The cold, impersonal efficiency expert is not an ideal. The machines that work for him develop only part of their energy. Person who rise to tremendous leadership heights use a third approach that we call being human. Several years ago, I worked closely with John S., who is an executive in the engineering development section of a large aluminium manufacturer. John had mastered the be human approach and was enjoying its rewards. In dozens of little ways, John made his actions say, "You are a human being. I respect you. I am here to help you in every way I can." When an individual from another city joined his department, John went to considerable personal inconvenience to help him find suitable housing. Working through his secretary and two other women employees, he set up office birthday parties for each member of the staff. The 30 minutes or so required for this was not a cost. Rather, it was an investment in getting loyalty and output. When he learned that one of his staff members belonged to a minority faith, John called him in and explained that he would arrange for him to observe his religious holidays that don't coincide with the more common holidays. When an employee or someone in the employee's family was ill, John remembered. He took time to compliment his staff individually for their off the job accomplishments. But the largest evidence of John's be human philosophy showed up in the way he handled a dismissal problem. One of the employees, who had been hired by John's predecessor, simply lacked the aptitude and interest for the work involved. John handled the problem magnificently. He did not use the conventional procedure of calling the employee into his office and giving him first the bad news and then second 15 or 30 days to move out. Instead, he did two unusual things. First, he explained why it would be to the employee's personal advantage to find a new situation where his aptitudes and interests would be more useful. He worked with the employee and put him in touch with a reputable vocational guidance consultant. Next, he did something else above and beyond the call of duty. He helped the employee find a new job by setting up interviews with executives in other companies where the employee's skills were needed. In just 18 days after the dismissal conference, the employee was relocated in a very promising situation. The dismissal procedure intrigued me. So I asked John to explain his thinking behind it. He explained it this way: there's an old maxim I have formed and held in my mind. He began. Whoever is under a man's power is under his protection too. We never should have hired this man in the first place because he's not cut out for this kind of work. But since we did, the least I could do was to help him to relocate. Anybody, John continued, can hire a man. But the test of leadership is how one handles the dismissal. By helping that employee relocate before he left us, built up a feeling of job security in everyone in my department. I let them know by example that no one gets dumped on the streets as long as I am here. Make no mistake, John's Be Human brand of leadership paid off. There were no secret gossip sessions about John. He received unquestioned loyalty and support. He had maximum job security because he gave maximum job security to his subordinates. For about 15 years, I have been close to a fellow I will call Bob W. Bob is in his late 50s. He came up the hard way with a hit or miss education and no money. Bob found himself out of work in 1931, but he has always been a scrambler, not one to be idle. Bob started an upholstery shop in his garage. Thanks to his untiring efforts, the business grew, and today it's a modern furniture manufacturing plant with over 300 employees. Today, Bob is a millionaire. Money and material things have ceased to be a concern, but Bob is rich in other ways too. He is a millionaire in friends, contentment, and satisfaction. Of Bob's many fine qualities, his tremendous desire to help other people stands out. Bob is human and he is a specialist in treating others the way human beings want to be treated. One day, Bob and I were discussing the matter of criticizing people. Bob's human way of doing it is a master formula. Here is the way he put it: I don't think you could find anybody who would say I am a softie or a weakling. I run a business. When something isn't going right, I fix it. But it's the way I fix it that's important. If employees are doing something wrong or are making mistake, I am doubly careful not to hurt their feelings and make them feel small or embarrassed. I just use four simple steps. First, I talk to them privately. Second, I praise them for what they are doing well. Third, I point out the one thing at the moment that they could do better and I help them find the way. Fourth, I praise them again on their good points. And this four-step formula works. When I do it this way, people thank me because I have found that's exactly the way they like it. When they walk out of this office, they have been reminded that they are not only pretty good, they can be even better. I have been betting on people all my life, Bob says. And the better I treat them, the more good things happen to me. I honestly don't plan it that way. That's just the way it works out. Let me give you an example. Back about, 5 or 6 years ago, one of the production men came to work drunk. Pretty soon, there was a commotion in the plant. It seems this fellow had taken a 5-gallon can of liquor and was splashing it all over the place. Well, the other workmen took the liquor away from him, and the plant superintendent escorted him out. I walked outside and found him sitting against the building in a kind of stupor. I helped him up, put him in my car, and took him to his home. His wife was frantic. I tried to reassure her that everything would be all right. Oh, but you don't understand, she said. Mr. W, that is Miss, so she was telling Mr. W to the author, doesn't stand for anyone being drunk on the job. Jim's lost his job, and now what will we do? I told her Jim wouldn't be dismissed. She asked how. I knew. The reason I explained is because I am Mr. W. She almost fainted. I told her I would do all I could do to help Jim at the plant, and I hoped she would do all she could do at home and just have him on the job in the morning. When I got back to the plant, I went down to Jim's department and spoke to Jim's co workers. I told them, "You have seen something unpleasant here today, but I want you to forget it. Jim will be back tomorrow. Be kind to him. He's been a good worker for a long time, and we owe it to him to give him another chance." Jim got back on the ball, and his drinking was never again a problem. I soon forgot about the incident, but Jim did. 2 years ago, the headquarters of the local union sent some men here to negotiate the contract for the local. They had some staggering, simply unrealistic demands. Jim, quiet, meek Jim, suddenly became a leader. He got busy and reminded the fellows in the plant that they would always gotten a fair deal from Mr. W, and we didn't need outsiders coming to tell us how to run our affairs. The outsiders left, and as usual, we negotiated our contract like friends, thanks to Jim. Here are two ways to use the Be Human approach to make you a better leader. First, each time you face a difficult matter involving people, ask yourself, what is the human way to handle this? Ponder over this question when there is a disagreement among your subordinates or when an employee creates a problem. Remember Bob W.'s formula for helping others correct their mistakes. Avoid sarcasm. Avoid being cynical. Avoid taking people down a peg or two. Avoid putting others in their place. Ask, what is the human way to deal with people? It always pays, sometime sooner, sometime later, but it always pays. A second way to profit from the Be Human rule is to let your actions put show that you put people first. Show interest in your subordinates of the job accomplishments. Treat everyone with dignity. Remind yourself that the primary purpose in life is to enjoy it. As a general rule, the more interest you show in a person, the more he will produce for you. And his production is what carries you forward to greater and greater success. Praise your subordinates to your supervisor by putting in plugs for them at every opportunity. It's an old American customer. It's an old American custom to admire the fellow who is on the side of the little man. Your subordinates will appreciate your plugs and their loyalty to you will grow. And do not fear that this will lower your own importance in the eyes of your supervisor. Rather, a man big enough to be humble appears more confident than the insecure man who feels compelled to call attention to his accomplishments. A little modesty goes a long way. Praise your subordinates personally and at every opportunity. Praise them for their cooperation. Praise them for every extra effort they put forth. Praise is the greatest single incentive you can give people, and it costs you nothing. Besides, a right in vote has often overthrown a powerful known candidate. You never know when your subordinates can do you a turn by coming to your defense. Practice praising people. Rub people the right way. Be human. All right, so we will read the leadership rule number 3 and 4 tomorrow. And with this, we end today's call. Let's practice these two principles and do share with me if it is helping or not. And we will meet again tomorrow, same time. Until then, see you. Bye bye.